All right, hello class and welcome. So I'm going to, in just a moment, share my screen so we can look at an activity. Okay, there we go. All right, so welcome class, those of you attending and also anyone who's watching the recording later. So what I'm going to do today is we're going to discuss the one of the assigned readings, and I'll also do a little bit to talk about the memo as well. There are a few things I want to mention about that as we move towards that assignment. So just in terms of the course structure, just a couple reminders. I do post a preview every week that lets you know what we're going to be doing that week. All of these readings are located within the individual weekly home folders, but this just gives you a rundown. So we have two articles and a chapter. We're going to talk about chapter 9 on Wednesday, but for today, we're going to look at American identity crisis. And one of the main reasons that I assigned this article was that it deals with jobs and professions and identity and how those particular professions shape who we are and what we how we view ourselves, how other people view us, and some of the pitfalls of having your professional identity really just take over your other aspects of your identity. Okay, so the article has a series of questions here, and I have this set up as a discussion board. So it's discussion board 3, and that's that's one of the things that we're going to be working on today. So I just want you to just kind of keep that in mind. I will introduce that particular assignment in just a bit. You will complete that discussion board after the recorded portion of the lecture today. But in terms of identity, I just want to talk a little bit about what I mean by that, because for your documented memo, there are essentially two sections to it. One is going to convey a series of factual aspects of that career. So, what educational level do you need to attain to get it? What degrees or certifications are necessary to pursue that? What are the job duties that entails? So you'll describe what someone in that profession does. So, for example, English professor. If you want to teach at the college level, you would need at least a master's degree. Many have a PhD. So it's a long road academically to pursue that career. So that's one thing someone would need to keep in mind. And then in terms of job duties, you're going to, of course, teach courses. You also design courses. You work on various committees on campus as well. So there are a number of different things that you do. You research, you write articles. The extent to which you do that depends on what kind of job that you have. So you would describe all of that information. Maybe you'd also talk about salary or geography if a job is located in a particular part of the country or is going to involve a lot of travel. You might mention that. But the other part of the memo deals with identity. So how does working in that profession shape who you are? So this is related to question 3 on the Robinson article. And let me just give a couple of illustrations of that. So if you are a nurse or a doctor, that's often going to involve working some very long and irregular hours. You might be on call. So, your personal life adapts to meet the needs of that professional life. It's a demanding job. It's a job that people also tend to respect and look up to, certainly. And one of the other things that you could say is that when you enter a profession, you start off as someone who is new and you're learning. You might have a series of mentors along the way who help you with how to do this job, how to excel at what you're doing. But then at a certain point, when you've done the job for a long time, you kind of take on that role. So your role changes, and as new people come in, you then mentor them and help them to get oriented to what they're doing. And that's one aspect of identity that I think you could discuss in this memo, is that as you enter a profession and pursue that, that your confidence is going to grow, your sense of self, your feeling of belonging. The imposter syndrome might kind of start to reduce, although that's still there. And imposter syndrome, that refers to this idea that you feel like you don't know what you're doing, that that you somehow are ended up in this position by mistake, and you're just you're going to fail. And so it's a kind of anxiety that people get. It's really common in graduate school when you sort of feel overwhelmed. You feel like other people are getting stuff and you're not. Your work's not good enough. It's not ever going to be good enough. And then you work through that and you overcome it. And it certainly can be something that drives you. Now, one of the things that Robinson talks about is how it's important for your job identity to not really just take over. And if we look at number 2, the ways in which a job identity is a pseudo identity, if you think of it like this, so you take 20 different doctors, nurses, engineers, software developers, and of those 20 people that all have that same job. So you have 20 software developers there. Do they all have the same identity? No, I mean, of course not. I mean, they have the same job, the same profession, but there are so many different complexities that make someone who they are. So it's a combination of their experiences, their character, where they live. So there's aspects of culture that come into it. And so you can't really just say that all software developers are like this. They see the world in this way. Now, on the flip side, once you're in that profession, there's this kind of pressure to embody that job identity that people have in mind. They make assumptions about who you are, how you view the world, and there's a kind of pressure there to fill that role. That pressure can be kind of direct and prominent, or it can operate in more subtle ways. And so Robinson talks about the need to separate from that, to maintain who you are, and the way that he outlines that you can do that is through building up leisure skills that also define who you are, so that it's not just based on your job. You don't just define yourself by your job, because if you do, what do you do when you retire or get laid off? And And these are questions that people consider usually in their financial dimensions, which certainly are important. So preparing for retirement for most people involves financial planning, but also thinking about what it is that you do after you leave that profession. What do you do to occupy your time? And if you don't consider that, if you don't build up these leisure skills, there's a kind of emptiness that people often feel when they leave a profession. The same goes for if people are laid off, they think of it as a personal failure, when often there are a lot of other factors that drive that on a corporate level in terms of when they downsize or expand or let people go. That having a kind of strong sense of self can help you weather that. It's going to be a difficult situation regardless, and it can be really life altering. But psychologically, Robinson talks about ways to build up a sense of identity beyond just that everyday profession. And my last point about the article relates to this idea of performance identity, meaning that we define success by how successful we are at our jobs. And the way in which performance is measured professionally is also changing. So it used to be in a corporate model or even at a college or university that your performance was on a quarterly or yearly evaluation. Your manager sits down. They usually have a pre-generated form, and they're going to assess your performance based on that. And they write little paragraphs or check little boxes, and that's how you're evaluated. Well, if you look at what Amazon and companies like that do, the evaluation is automated and much more frequent. So if you are working at a company like Amazon, you're going to, like, let's say you work in their warehouse, and you fetch packages. So that's a really common job at Amazon. So you have this little tablet that tells you where to go. So you need to pick up a smart speaker from this particular aisle, and you walk over there. It could be 20 yards away. It could be hundreds of yards away or half a mile away. Those places are huge. And you have a timer. It tells you how long you have to go get it. And you go fetch the item. Well, then you get another alert. You got to go pick up something else. And it just times you throughout the day. There are rewards for making your time and exceeding it, and there are penalties for not making your time. So it's this kind of high pressure environment. But I can tell you that approach also extends to the more white collar jobs within a company like that. So that software engineers working in their cloud computing area are evaluated in the same way and placed under these similar high pressure scenarios. So you can imagine that that's a kind of stressful environment. Some people thrive in that and like it. For other people, it's more problematic. But the point that Robinson is making is that no matter how you're evaluated, no matter how your performance is calculated, even if your goals for yourself are internal rather than external, that it's important to not define your success as a person based simply on those criteria. Okay, so that discussion board is asking you to answer these 6 questions based on your review of the article. So in a few minutes, I will stop the recording and have the class get started with that. If you're watching the recording, you can follow that activity on Canvas, and I would just ask that you post it this week. The other thing I wanted to talk about before we do that is on the memo itself. I want you to be sure that for Wednesday you review the documented memo assignment and especially the sample. I'm going to use the sample as a kind of window into teaching APA. So I'll have the document up, I'll share it. I'm going to walk you through the title page, the in-text citations, and the references, because I want to make sure that for our draft due at the end of week 3 on September 8th, that you have an APA a template of your own that you're working from to make sure the memo is structured correctly. We'll also cover Chapter 9. Chapter 9 outlines number of different types of business communications, so business writing, different genres of writing within business, and the memo being one of those. So make sure that you do read that as well. Okay, so I'm going to turn your attention now, and I'll go ahead and put this in the folder as well for week 2. But I want you to work on discussion board 3. And this will be one of our activities this week. You should complete it by fully by Sunday. It's worth 10 points. And I will get the grades posted from last week as well. And should be 5 points. Sorry, 1 second. Okay. All right. So work on discussion board 3, and I'm available to answer any questions that you might have for those of you in attendance. I am going to go ahead and stop the recording, and if you want to, you can work independently. And yes, Audrey has a question.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, so when you talk about the identity influences and like your self-reflection, you're pretty much just talking about like where you need to be mentally to do this job and about if you would do this job yourself.
Yes.
Okay. Thank
Yeah,
you.
so